The observation deck of Outpost Epsilon 12 offered the best view of the swirling nebula that dominated this sector of space. Commander Dominic Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his broad shoulders tense beneath his military-grade uniform. Even after 5 years of service at the edge of human territory, the sight still took his breath away, a violent ballet of cosmic dust and newborn stars. "Still admiring the light show, Commander?" The voice of his second-in-command, Lieutenant Hadley, broke his contemplation. Dominic turned, a slight smile softening his weathered features. At 35, his face carried the marks of someone who had survived Earth's harshest environments, a scar along his jawline from a training accident in the Atacama, eyes permanently crinkled at the corners from squinting against Arctic blizzards. "Never gets old, Lieutenant. Reminds me why we're out here." The truth was more complicated. Dominic had volunteered for this isolated posting because Earth had begun to feel too comfortable, too safe. Humans had transformed their homeworld from a place of natural dangers into climate-controlled cities and regulated wilderness. For someone born with the instincts of ancient hunter-gatherers, civilization sometimes felt like a cage. "Sir, we're picking up an unidentified vessel approaching from the Vega Quadrant." Hadley's comlink chirped. Not responding to hails. Dominic's relaxed posture vanished instantly. "Battle stations. I want all personnel at ready positions." The outpost, originally designed as a scientific research station, had been militarized after first contact with the Galactic Confederation revealed that humans weren't alone in the universe. Most alien species they'd encountered were peaceful enough, evolved on temperate worlds where cooperation trumped competition. But there were rumors of others, raiders, pirates, and worse. "Weapons online, shields at maximum," reported the tactical officer as Dominic strode onto the command deck. On screen, he ordered. The vessel that appeared was unlike any in the Confederation registry. Sleek, with jagged edges that reminded Dominic of a predatory bird, its hull bore marks of battle and repairs. "Life signs?" he asked. "One," replied the science officer with surprise. "But it's unusual. Not matching any known species parameters." Before Dominic could respond, the communications panel lit up. "We're being hailed, sir." "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Dominic found himself staring at a humanoid figure. Female, based on secondary characteristics, but decidedly non-human. Her skin was a deep indigo shade that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. Where human hair would grow, she had a crown of flexible spines that shifted with her movements. But it was her eyes that captured Dominic's attention, vertical pupils set in amber irises that glowed with predatory intelligence. "This is Commander Dominic Reed of Earth Alliance Outpost Epsilon 12. Identify yourself and state your purpose." The alien regarded him for a moment, head tilting slightly as if assessing prey. When she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality despite the translator's mechanical overtone. "I am Taris Valen, last surviving warrior of House Valen, Kronos, 9. Her eyes narrowed. "My ship requires repairs and supplies. I can pay." Dominic studied her, noting the military posture, the way her gaze constantly scanned the visible command deck behind him, assessing threats, cataloging weaknesses. "A soldier, then. Or something equivalent. Kronos, 9. I'm not familiar with that world." A bitter smile crossed her face, revealing teeth slightly more pointed than human norm. "Few are. It was destroyed 3 lunar cycles ago. An unforeseen geological catastrophe." Something in her tone suggested there was more to the story, but Dominic sensed now was not the time to push. Standard protocol dictated caution with unknown aliens, but his instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive in Earth's most dangerous environments, told him this visitor wasn't an immediate threat. "We can provide docking and limited repair facilities," he said finally. "But I'll need to inspect your vessel and weapons will remain powered down while you're here." Taris nodded sharply. "Acceptable terms, Commander." Transmitting docking vectors now. As the communication ended, Lieutenant Hadley approached, voice lowered. Sir, regulations require quarantine procedures for unclassified alien species. Noted, Lieutenant. Prepare docking bay 3 with appropriate containment protocols. I'll handle the inspection personally. Sir, with respect. That will be all, Lieutenant. Dominic's tone brooked no argument. 90 minutes later, Dominic stood in the docking bay as the alien craft completed its landing sequence. Up close, the vessel was even more impressive, and more battle-damaged, than it had appeared on sensors. Scorch marks and impact craters marred its hull, telling stories of recent and intense combat. The airlock cycled, and Tari's Valen emerged. Dominic had to adjust his assessment immediately. The screen hadn't conveyed her true presence. She stood nearly his height, unusual for most non-human species they'd encountered, which tended toward smaller statures. Her movements were fluid but powerful, suggesting a musculature designed for higher gravity environments. The armor she wore was form-fitting but clearly functional, marked with the same battle damage as her ship. Most striking was the way she moved, the careful assessment of the hangar, the balanced stance that could shift to attack or defense in an instant. It was the movement of a predator, one accustomed to being both hunter and hunted. Commander, she acknowledged with a slight incline of her head. Welcome to Epsilon 12, he replied, noting how the security team behind him had unconsciously tightened their grips on their weapons. They sensed it too, this visitor was dangerous in a way the diplomats and traders they usually encountered were not. Tari's noticed their reaction, and a flicker of something, amusement, resignation, crossed her features. Your people sense danger, she observed. Good instincts. Rare in spacefaring species. Dominic gestured toward the interior corridor. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice how she matched his pace exactly, maintaining a perfect distance, close enough for conversation, far enough for reaction time if needed. It was the spacing of two predators, respecting each other's territory. Your world, he began, seeking neutral conversation. Kronos, 9. You said it was destroyed? Tari's expression hardened. My homeworld was known as a death world among the Galactic Confederation. Extreme temperature variations, high gravity, toxic atmosphere components, aggressive fauna. For the first time, a note of pride entered her voice. Only the strong survived. My people evolved accordingly. Dominic felt a jolt of recognition. Sounds similar to Earth in many ways, though perhaps more extreme. Her amber eyes snapped to his, suddenly intense. Earth is classified as a death world. Your species evolved under harsh conditions. By Confederation standards, yes. Our gravity is higher than most inhabited worlds, our temperature range is wider, our ecosystem more competitive. He shrugged. We didn't realize it until first contact. Apparently, most sentient species evolved on much more hospitable planets. They had reached the observation deck. Tari's moved immediately to the viewport, staring out at the nebula and distant stars. I believed I was alone, she said quietly, almost to herself. The last of the Death Worlders. Something in her tone, vulnerability beneath the warrior's exterior, resonated with Dominic. He joined her at the viewport, maintaining that careful distance. What really happened to your world, Tari's Valen? She turned to face him fully, her expression calculating, measuring, deciding. After a long moment, she seemed to reach a decision. My world was not destroyed by natural causes, Commander Reed. It was targeted precisely because it produced beings like me. Her voice lowered. There are forces in this galaxy that fear what Death World species might become. The adaptability, the resilience, the potential for. She paused, searching for the right word. Evolution. Dominic felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. And Earth? Are we at risk? Tarisa's gaze held his, unflinching. Yes. Which is why I sought out a human outpost. Your people need to be warned. Warned about what exactly? The purifiers. Her voice carried the weight of personal loss. A coalition of species dedicated to eliminating what they consider evolutionary aberrations, species like yours and mine, forged in the crucible of harsh worlds. As if on cue, the station's alert system blared to life. Lieutenant Hadley's voice came over the comm system. Commander to the bridge. Multiple unidentified vessels just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. They're on an intercept course. Dominic and Taris exchanged a glance that contained volumes, recognition, understanding, the wordless communication of two predator species acknowledging a common threat. It appears, Taris said grimly, that they found us sooner than I anticipated. Tell me everything, Dominic demanded as they sprinted toward the command deck, the station's alert klaxons wailing around them. How many ships? What kind of weapons? Defensive capabilities? Taris matched his pace effortlessly, her movements fluid despite the station's artificial gravity being calibrated for human comfort rather than her higher gravity physiology. The purifiers typically deploy in triads, 3 specialized vessels working in concert. The hammer for brute force attacks, the needle for precision strikes, and the shield for defensive support. Her voice remained steady, clinical. Their technology is advanced but not insurmountable. Their true advantage lies in numbers and coordination. They burst onto the command deck where Lieutenant Hadley was already directing defensive preparations. The main viewscreen showed 5 sleek vessels approaching in perfect formation, smooth, rounded hulls unlike Tarisa's jagged craft or the utilitarian design of human ships. 5 ships, Dominic noted. You said they deploy in triads. A flicker of concern crossed Tarisa's features. They've upgraded their tactics. Not surprising, my people destroyed several triads before. Her voice trailed off, the memory of her world's destruction momentarily stealing her composure. Hadley turned, eyes widening at Tarisa's presence on the bridge. Sir, protocol dictates. Protocol is suspended, Lieutenant, Dominic cut him off. These vessels are hostile. Taris has tactical information we need. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances, but years of discipline held. Dominic approached the tactical station, Taris close behind. Weapons range in 90 seconds, Commander, reported the tactical officer. Open a channel, Dominic ordered. The communications officer complied, and the viewscreen shifted to show the interior of the lead purifier vessel. The being that appeared seemed almost fragile, tall and willowy with iridescent skin so pale it was nearly translucent. Large, lidless eyes dominated a face with minimal features. When it spoke, the voice was melodious, almost hypnotic. Human outpost, this is Arbiter Zinthax of the Purification Fleet. You harbor a fugitive from justice. Surrender the Chronos aberration immediately, and we will depart in peace. Dominic felt rather than saw Taris stiffen beside him. Her hand had moved to where a weapon would be if she were armed. This is Commander Dominic Reed. We have granted asylum to a refugee seeking aid. Under Earth Alliance protocols, we cannot surrender a guest without due process. The Arbiter's expression couldn't change, Dominic realized, noting the rigid structure of its face, but the tone shifted to one of practiced regret. Commander, you are uninformed about the nature of this creature. The Chrono species represents a galactic threat, a biological aberration that defies the natural order. For the safety of all civilized worlds, it must be contained. Taris stepped forward, her amber eyes blazing. You mean exterminated, Arbiter? Like you exterminated my world. The Arbiter's gaze shifted to her, and something like disgust rippled across its features. The contamination speaks. How unfortunate that one survived the cleansing. Dominic stepped slightly in front of Taris, a subtle but deliberate positioning. Arbiter, I suggest you withdraw from Earth Alliance space immediately. Any hostile action will be considered an act of war. The Arbiter's head tilted in what might have been amusement. Your species is young, Commander. You do not understand the greater harmony of the galaxy. The strong must be culled so that balance can prevail. It is regrettable that your world too must eventually face cleansing, but your involvement with this fugitive accelerates the timetable. The communication cut abruptly. Dominic turned to the tactical officer. Status? They're charging weapons, sir. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Dominic turned to Taris. If these are the same weapons that destroyed your world. They're not, she interrupted, moving to the tactical display. Those would annihilate this station instantly. These are standard ship-to-ship weapons. They want to board, not destroy. Her fingers moved over the display, highlighting key points on the approaching vessels. Target these nodes, their shield generators are vulnerable at juncture points. Lieutenant Hadley stepped forward. Sir, we can't take tactical advice from an unknown alien who just led hostile forces to our doorstep. Dominic met his second-in-command's gaze steadily. Noted, Lieutenant. But right now, she's the only one who knows what we're facing. He turned to the tactical officer. Target as she indicated. Fire when ready. The first salvo struck with surprising effectiveness. 2 of the purifier vessels fell back, their shields flickering. The others pressed forward, returning fire that shook the station violently. Shield integrity at 70%, reported a technician. They're targeting our weapons arrays specifically. Taris moved to Dominic's side, her voice low. Commander, this station cannot withstand a prolonged assault. My ship has modifications specifically designed to counter purifier technology. Your damaged ship against 5 of theirs. Dominic questioned. The corner of her mouth quirked up in what might have been a smile. I didn't survive the fall of Kronos 9 by being cautious. Besides, I only need to create a diversion while you evacuate your personnel. Another hit rocked the station, more violent than the first. Consoles sparked and emergency lighting activated. Shield integrity at 40%. We've lost the primary weapons array. Dominic made his decision. No evacuations. We stand together. He turned to Taris. What else can you tell us about their tactical weaknesses? For a moment, surprise flickered across her features. Clearly, she had expected him to prioritize his own people. Then her expression hardened into resolute focus. The purifiers evolved on worlds with minimal environmental challenges. Their bodies are adapted for efficiency, not resilience. She moved to the tactical station. They cannot withstand extreme conditions, temperature variations, pressure changes, even certain sound frequencies cause them physical distress. Dominic turned to his engineering officer. Can we modify our environmental systems to create localized condition changes if they board? The officer nodded hesitantly. Theoretically, yes. We could create corridors of extreme heat or cold, manipulate pressure differentials. Do it, Dominic ordered. And prepare boarding defense teams. We're going to make this station a death world for anyone who tries to take it. The next hour transformed Outpost Epsilon 12 from a scientific installation into a fortress designed to exploit the purifier's physiological weaknesses. Under Taris's guidance, they created zones of deadly environmental conditions, set up sonic disruptors calibrated to frequencies that would incapacitate the invaders, and prepared choke points where the station's heavier gravity could be increased further to advantage the Death Worlder's stronger physiology. Throughout the preparations, Dominic noticed how seamlessly Taris integrated with his crew. Despite her alien appearance, there was something fundamentally familiar about her approach to combat, the pragmatic focus on survival, the innovative adaptation to circumstances, the almost predatory anticipation of the coming fight. It reminded him of Earth's Special Forces operators, those men and women who had never lost the edge that their ancient ancestors had needed to survive. When the first boarding parties breached the outer hull, Dominic and Tari's found themselves defending a central corridor, shoulder to shoulder. The station's modifications were proving effective. The first wave of purifiers collapsed almost immediately when exposed to the increased gravity and temperature fluctuations. But the second wave came prepared with environmental suits, forcing the defenders into direct combat. Dominic fired his pulse rifle with precision, dropping 2 attackers with headshots. Beside him, Tari's moved with lethal grace, her borrowed weapon almost an extension of her body. When her ammunition depleted, she switched to a combat blade without hesitation, closing distance with a speed that shocked even Dominic. The purifiers, for all their technological advantages, were clearly unprepared for hand-to-hand combat with Death Worlders. Their movements were sluggish in the increased gravity, their reflexes slower than their opponents. What should have been an overwhelming force was being systematically decimated. During a brief lull in the fighting, Dominic and Tari's found themselves temporarily alone in a junction corridor, catching their breath behind a makeshift barricade. "Your people fight well," Tari's observed, wiping iridescent purifier blood from her blade. "I did not expect such ferocity from a species so recently emerged into space." Dominic checked his weapon's charge. "Humans have been fighting each other for millennia. It's one of our less admirable traits, but useful in moments like this. On Kronos 9, we had a saying, peace flourishes only in the shadow of strength." She met his gaze, amber eyes intense. "Your people understand this instinctively. Most species in the Confederation have forgotten it, or never knew it at all." Their comms crackled to life with Lieutenant Hadley's voice. "Commander, they're pulling back. All boarding parties are retreating to their vessels." Dominic and Tari's exchanged a skeptical glance. "That's too easy," he muttered. "Agreed," Tari's replied, already moving toward a nearby terminal. Her fingers flew over the controls, accessing sensor data. "They're repositioning, wait." Her expression darkened. "Energy spike in the lead vessel. They're charging something powerful." Dominic hit his comm bridge, full power to forward shields. "They're preparing to." The impact hit before he could finish, sending them both crashing into the bulkhead. Emergency containment fields sprang up as hull breaches cascaded throughout the forward sections. "What was that?" Dominic groaned, pulling himself up and offering Tari's a hand. She accepted it, rising smoothly despite the blow she'd taken. "Focused gravimetric pulse. It's how they start planetary cleansings, destabilizing structural integrity before the main attack." Another hit rocked the station. The lights flickered and died, leaving only emergency illumination. "Commander." Hadley's voice came through, distorted by interference. "Station integrity critical. We can't take another hit like that." Dominic made a swift calculation. "Evacuate all personnel to the emergency shuttles. Lieutenant, you'll lead them out through the rear maintenance corridor once the purifiers commit to their next attack run. And you, sir? I'm going to give them something else to worry about." He turned to Tari's. "Time for that ship of yours to create a diversion after all." Her eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning. "You're coming with me." It wasn't a question, but Dominic nodded anyway. "Someone needs to make sure you come back." A slow smile spread across her face, predatory and appreciative at once. "Bold for a human. You'd be surprised what humans are capable of when pushed." He activated his comm again. "Hadley, initiate evacuation protocol Omega. And have someone unlock the weapons locker near docking bay 3, we're going to need the heavy ordnance." "Sir, regulations are meant to be broken when necessary, Lieutenant." He glanced at Tari's, who was already checking her borrowed blade. "Sometimes survival requires breaking a few rules." 10 minutes later, they sprinted into docking bay 3 where Tari's battered ship waited. Behind them, the station groaned as its structural integrity continued to fail. The weapons they'd collected from the locker were strapped to their backs, Earth's most advanced portable armaments, designed for special forces operating in extreme conditions. As they approached the ship, Dominic finally saw its name emblazoned on the hull in Chronos script, Vengeance's Claw. Appropriate, he noted as they boarded. The interior was compact, clearly designed for a minimal crew. Every surface served multiple functions, and the controls were configured for fast responses rather than comfort. It reminded Dominic of Earth's early combat aircraft, function over form, survival over convenience. Tari slid into the pilot's seat with practiced ease. "Strap in, Commander. My people designed our ships for high-G maneuvers that might challenge your physiology." Dominic secured himself in the co-pilot's chair. "I've pulled 9 Gs in atmospheric fighter training. I'll manage." She gave him a sidelong glance that might have contained a hint of respect. "We'll see." The Vengeance's Claw came to life around them, systems activating with a low thrum that vibrated through the deck plates. The view screen showed the purifier vessels still focused on the station, preparing for another devastating attack run. "What's the plan?" Dominic asked, familiarizing himself with the alien controls. Tari's hands danced over the console, bringing weapon systems online. "They don't know my ship is operational. We'll launch while their sensors are focused on charging their main weapon, then target the lead vessel's propulsion system. And if we succeed?" Her amber eyes glinted with predatory anticipation. "Then we run. Fast and far. And find somewhere to properly plan how 2 Death Worlders are going to take the fight back to the purifiers." As the docking clamps released and the ship surged forward, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the pure, electric thrill of facing overwhelming odds with nothing but skill, determination, and a worthy ally at his side. It was the feeling his ancestors must have known when facing apex predators on the African savanna, or when voyaging into unknown seas. It was the feeling of being truly alive. Tari sensed his mood and shot him a fierce grin that displayed her slightly pointed teeth. "Ready to show these soft-world tyrants what Death Worlders can do, Commander Reed?" Dominic returned her smile with equal intensity. "Absolutely, Warrior Valen. Let's hunt." The Vengeance's Claw streaked through the void, its engines pushing well beyond safety parameters. Behind them, the purifier vessels gave chase, their superior technology gradually closing the gap. Inside the cockpit, warning lights flashed as systems strained under the pressure of sustained high-speed flight. "How much longer can we maintain this speed?" Dominic asked, monitoring the ship's structural integrity readings with growing concern. Tari's hands never left the controls, her movements precise despite the violent shuddering of the ship. "The real question is whether we can reach the Carswell Nebula before they overtake us." Dominic studied the navigation display. The nebula lay just ahead, a vast cloud of ionized gas and cosmic dust that would interfere with sensors and weapons targeting. "A perfect place to hide, or to stage an ambush." "Your ship is damaged," he observed. "Can we survive in there?" A predatory smile curved Tari's lips. "Chronos ships are designed to withstand far worse than a nebula. The question is whether your human physiology can handle what comes next." Before Dominic could respond, she executed a maneuver that would have been impossible in any Earth vessel, a spinning dive that subjected them to forces that pressed Dominic hard against his restraints. His vision grayed momentarily, but years of high-G training kept him conscious. "Impressive," Tari's noted, glancing at him. "Most non-Chronos would have blacked out." "Told you," Dominic managed through gritted teeth. "Humans are adaptable." The Vengeance's Claw plunged into the nebula's outer reaches, and immediately the vibrant purples and blues of ionized gas enveloped them. The pursuing vessels hesitated at the boundary, clearly wary of the navigational hazards within. "They're recalculating," Dominic observed, watching the tactical display. "Weighing the risks." "The purifiers prefer certainty," Tari's replied, her tone contemptuous. They eliminate what they fear, and they fear what they cannot predict. A nebula is chaos to their sensors. She guided the ship deeper, navigating by instinct as much as instrumentation. The ship's systems struggled against the nebula's interference, but Tari's compensated with the natural skill of someone born to fly. Dominic found himself impressed, not just by her piloting abilities, but by the calm precision with which she executed each adjustment. "There," she said finally, powering down to minimal systems. "We can hide here while we make repairs and plan our next move." In the sudden quiet, with only emergency lighting casting a low amber glow throughout the cockpit, Dominic became acutely aware of their isolation. Two warriors from different worlds, united by circumstance and a common enemy, floating in a pocket of relative safety while the galaxy around them teemed with threats. "We need to contact Earth," he said, unbuckling his restraints. "Warn them about the purifiers." Tari's expression darkened. "Your communication systems aren't secure against purifier interception. Any warning you send will reveal Earth's location before your people can prepare adequate defenses." "Then what do you suggest?" "We can't fight an entire fleet with one damaged ship." She rose, moving with that fluid grace that reminded Dominic of Earth's apex predators. "No, but we can find a way to even the odds." She gestured for him to follow her deeper into the ship. "Come. I need to show you something." The corridor led to a small chamber that appeared to serve as both cargo hold and workshop. Tari's moved to a secured container and pressed her palm against its locking mechanism. It hummed briefly before sliding open, revealing a crystalline object roughly the size of a human fist. It pulsed with an inner light that shifted between deep blue and violet. "This," she said reverently, "is why the purifiers destroyed my world. The heart of Kronos." Dominic approached cautiously, sensing that he was being shown something few outsiders had ever seen. "What is it?" "A data core. The collected knowledge of 1,000 generations of Kronos scientists and warriors." Her amber eyes reflected the crystal's glow. "Including information about purifier weaknesses that my ancestors discovered centuries ago when they first encountered them." Dominic's mind raced with the implications. "Your people fought them before." "And drove them back," Tari's confirmed. "For generations, the purifiers avoided Kronos space. But over time, as their coalition grew, they became bolder. A month ago, they attacked with overwhelming force, hundreds of ships against our planetary defenses." She fell silent, the memory of her world's destruction momentarily overwhelming her warrior's composure. Almost without thinking, Dominic placed a hand on her shoulder, a human gesture of solidarity that crossed species boundaries. "I'm sorry," he said simply. For a moment, she tensed at the contact. Then, surprisingly, she placed her hand over his in acknowledgement. "I survived because I was off-world, transporting the heart to safety. By the time I returned, there was nothing left." Her voice hardened. "But with this, we have a chance to ensure other death worlds don't suffer the same fate." Dominic gestured toward the crystal. "What exactly does it contain?" "Everything. Purifier biological weaknesses, tactical patterns, shield frequencies." She carefully lifted the heart from its container. "But most importantly, coordinates to the one thing that can truly stop them, the Nexus." "The Nexus?" "An ancient facility, built by a predecessor race that vanished millions of years ago. The purifiers believe it contains technology that can accelerate evolution, create more death world species." Her eyes met his. "They fear it almost as much as they fear us." Understanding dawned. "And you think we can use it against them somehow?" "I know we can." She returned the heart to its container. "But reaching it requires traversing purifier-controlled space. I couldn't do it alone, but with a human death worlder." She left the implication hanging. Dominic considered their situation. His duty called him to return to Earth, to warn his people directly. But Tari's logic was sound. Any direct communication would likely be intercepted, potentially accelerating the Purifier's timetable for attacking humanity. This nexus, he said slowly. How certain are you that it exists? The coordinates came from my world's most sacred archives. Every Chronos warrior swears an oath to protect this knowledge with their life. Her expression was solemn. I am the last to carry that oath. Something in her tone, the weight of responsibility, the determination to honor her fallen people, resonated with Dominic. He recognized in her the same core principles that drove Earth's best: duty, honor, sacrifice for a greater cause. If we do this, he said, we'll need supplies, weapons, possibly allies. This ship isn't exactly in prime condition. Tari's nodded. There's an independent trading post at the edge of the Carswell system, Haven's End. Not officially aligned with either the Confederation or the Purifiers. We can obtain what we need there without drawing attention. And after that? We make for the Nexus. Her amber eyes held his. Together. The word hung between them, meaningful, laden with implications that extended beyond tactical alliance. For the first time since meeting her, Dominic allowed himself to acknowledge the connection that had been forming, the natural resonance between two beings forged by similar evolutionary pressures, despite originating on worlds light years apart. Together, he agreed.